So, I mean, how would you explain the physical side of people? Are they seeing Planet X, or what are they seeing?
Okay, well, we do have a brown dwarf that we are orbiting around as a star, and that is, some people like to make a nice fit with Nibiru for that. That is true. This grand year that all 35 of those ancient cultures I was telling you about, the 25,000-year cycle they're all so obsessed with, that Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschen, these two great historians, put it in their book. All those prophecies talk about the 25,000-year cycle. That cycle is an orbit that we do around a brown dwarf. That's been conclusively demonstrated by, I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head. Anyway, the point is, this data, I've talked about it in my books, and it's on my show on, wisdomteachings.com. You can read all about it and watch the show. The point is, yes, we are in an orbit around a brown dwarf. No, it never gets close enough to us to cause trouble. And the Planet X theory is that this body will intrude into our solar system and will cause great cataclysmic disruption of the Earth and the other planets in our solar system. And my answer to that is, if you take a car and you put it in neutral, and then you take a refrigerator magnet and you try to pull the car with the magnet, the car is not going to move. The energetics in our solar system are so powerful. The planets are in precisely defined harmonic orbits. They don't just fly around. There's sacred geometry, which you could get into why the geometry is a function of sound vibration and all that. The point is, the planets are very precisely held in place by massive forces. Nothing the size of another planet is going to come in and mess that up. It's simply not possible. The mass of Planet X, even at the most generous estimates of its size, would still be only 0.01% of the mass of the sun. And it's like saying that you could fling a piece of sand at a cruise ship and have the cruise ship move in the ocean. It's not going to happen.
Okay, and Corey, have you, in all the meetings that you've done off-planet, have you come across or had discussions with people regarding Planet X and Nibiru? Has that come into the conversation at all?
What has come into the conversation has been that we're a part of a failed binary star system. The plethora, the vast majority of star systems out there are at least binary in nature. And we do have a brown dwarf that we have in a dance going around the galaxy that our sun is doing. So, but nothing about an actual planet called Nibiru or any other name that is a protruder planet that comes into our solar system every 3,600 years that busts through the Oort cloud and wreaks havoc.
That's what they're saying. And so all the issues that we're having on the planet at the moment, I mean, we're getting heightened volcanic activity, we're getting dormant volcanoes going off, we're getting flooding, we're getting plate movements, we're getting extreme weather. I mean, stuff that we haven't had before or we know of through records. What do you put that down to?
I put that down to the huge change in background energy, the energetic. We're moving into a high energy area of the galaxy, and as David talked about earlier, these changes are taking place on every planet in our solar system, and our sun is having massive changes. So, and we have an immediate star cluster, not just our local sun, but there's a star cluster around us that is moving in to this region of space, and the whole star cluster is experiencing these types of changes. And it has to do with the ebb and flow of these waves of energy that are coming in like tsunamis and having an effect on not only the people, like we described earlier, but also the planets, the tectonics, the weather, and the sun.
Having a major effect. And this ascension process, this shift that's going to take place, just kind of clarifying that, is this a physical shift? I mean, are we going to, what's going to happen to us from our physical bodies? I mean, are we just going to start developing these abilities? Are our bodies going to change in some way, DNA, and or do we, I mean, what is your take on this shift, this ascension?
Well, from my perspective, I've seen up in the research vessel, I've seen several different theories. Down here on the internet, I've seen an amazing number of theories. But from my perspective, I don't think there's, I really don't think there's any way to fully know until we experience it. There are a lot of theories about it. It's definitely going to be a massive change in consciousness.
Mm.
And what, has been proven, everything around us is vibration.
Mm. Yeah.
All matter, all energy, even the thoughts right now in our minds, they're all different states of vibration. And as the vibration of our consciousness is raised, so is, and we realize the power of our joint consciousness, we can have a direct effect on matter and energy around us. So, that may be one of the first steps that we notice to start happening. That's, kind of from my perspective.
Okay. Well,
David's done a lot more research into this and has a lot more theories on what's possible.
Well, I'll pass this. This is on your site again, and I'll pass this over to David. And it says here it was question number 4, or section number 4, it said, the people who are aware of this shift are going to have the best seats in the house. I also think all the people who have been bravely seeking the truth with varying degrees of success will experience karmic shifts of a lesser degree and will help anchor others around them. Each awake person will be a guide for others as things heat up before the event. David?
Well, I totally agree with that sentiment you just read. There is an ongoing debate about what we would call the gradual versus spontaneous theories. The gradual theory has an abundance of scientific evidence. We know that gradual DNA changes are already occurring to human beings. There's some really amazing studies that show that. For example, a University of Wisconsin anthropologist, Dr. John Hawks, studied the human DNA molecule, and this actually included DNA testing mummies, and he found that in the last 5,000 years, our DNA has evolved so rapidly that the overall structure of the molecule is 7% different than it was 5,000 years ago. And that is totally unprecedented. There's something called the Flynn effect, in which we find out that IQ scores are going up so fast that every 10 years they have to change the scoring system because a 100 is supposed to be average. That's occurring across 20 countries, including countries that don't have literacy. We also had a study that was recently done. Actually, it was done by the British, but it was based on American skulls going back to the mid-1800s, showing that the average cranial volume of the brain for an American has gone up in the last 150 years, so large that the size of the brain on average has increased by the volume of a tennis ball. So if you took a tennis ball-sized chunk of brain mass and shoved it inside somebody's head in a 150-year period, that's how much larger our brains have gotten. And this obviously is not just Americans, it's just that was the base of skulls they had to study.
I started to say a lot of people would have a lot of problems believing that with the way Americans have been behaving.
I know where you're coming from, yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that one.
So these data points are irrefutable. We also know a Russian scientist named Dr. Peter Garyaev was able to take eggs that had been laid by a salamander and then shine a laser beam through them, and that shouldn't do anything. But the laser apparently picked up whatever energy it is that makes a salamander, and then you take that salamander laser beam and you beam it into eggs that were laid by a frog. Well, guess what happens? And this, I was talking about this in the article that was plagiarized all the way back in 2001, right before September 11th. The frog eggs get energized with salamander energy, and they grow into salamanders.
I remember.
And they show no evidence of having been frogs.
I remember that. I read that article that you put up. I read about this. I found it very interesting. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you think about the salamander beam, there is a human upgrade beam that is coming through our sun right now that is beaming into us, and it is actually altering our DNA while we are alive. Now, that's one part of it. The other part of it is what happened to Padmasambhava, where he bursts into a light being, and something fundamentally happens to him. So, one of the things that not all, I would say, in specific terms, we have Zoroastrian prophecy, we have Hindu prophecy, and we have certain Christian prophecies, all clearly saying that they are expecting that our sun is going to have some sort of surge of massive brightness that's much more than what we normally see. Now, in Hindu prophecy, they call it the Samvartaka fire, Samavartaka. In Zoroastrian prophecy, they call it Fraso Kereti, or Kererti, Fraso-Kererti. And then in Christian prophecy, they call it the glory of the Lord, that it will shine from the east unto the west.
Would that be the rapture? Would they call that the rapture?
What's that?
Would they call that the rapture?
Yeah. The rapture does appear to be one variant of the scenario, which has been grossly misinterpreted by most people calling themselves Christians. And then there's the majority of Christians are kind of middle of the road and don't even really buy into the rapture. It's only fundamentalism where it usually is heavily discussed. But what people need to understand is this is not just Christian prophecy. We're talking 35 different ancient cultures. And I'm not saying there's a bunch of other ones left to the side. I'm saying anybody who ever had spiritual teachings from the gods, anybody who ever wrote stuff down that we've inherited, that's the 35. They all say something totally amazing and wonderful is going to happen. And then, thinking of that line, something wonderful is going to happen, you have certain authors who are giving us a glimpse of this in movies. Like, for example, Arthur C. Clarke, at the end of the movie 2010, you have the whole planet Jupiter get turned into a sun, some kind of big energetic emission. Arthur C. Clarke also talked about at the end of Childhood's End, that the whole solar system bursts with light. 2001 ends with the commander of the HAL ship, David Bowman. He goes into this vortex and he experiences some sort of evolution into what they call the star child. So clearly the ancient prophecies are expecting that there is going to be some sort of discontinuous energetic activation of what it means to be human. And what we really don't know, and nobody knows, is there going to be a solar flash? How much will it do? How quickly will we change once it happens? But it was very interesting when I first started to talk to Corey that he had encountered, actually he had a remote viewing where he encountered information suggesting there was going to be a solar event and that it would have very positive effects on Earth.
Excellent.
Yes.
So this negativity that you were talking about earlier about, things going mad on the planet, and it's part of a kind of karma. There's a big talk about September, October, and the banking system collapse. Do you guys know anything about this? Do you think it's part of the whole kind of the cabal, shutting down the cabal system?
Well, Corey has direct contact with the Alliance, whereas I only get it secondhand, so he's probably more qualified on this. So I have a lot to say, but he actually has direct contact with them. So.
Okay, Corey.
Well, first of all, we need to clarify. There is an Earth Alliance that's made up of quite a few different groups that loosely work together, and this involves the BRICS Alliance and all these other groups you've been hearing about. And they've been working to create a completely new financial system. And this financial system is just going to be a whole new